Hello everyone, welcome back to the Erasmus Expeditions. We are here with session 18 of our Momentum campaign, this one titled Whispers and Fragments. The title for tonight's episode, however, is Thricestrike. I'm very excited to get back to this. It's been a while since we've had a full table, and the first time that we've had this particular arrangement of players, so I'm very excited to be able to get to that tonight. But before we do, a couple of points of business. First and foremost, if mature language or subject matter is something that bothers you, then please do not watch this video. It would be hazardous for your health. Secondly, I want to, once again, I mentioned this last night during the health action, but I wanted to extend my heart to the people of Beirut and the people of Lebanon. They are dealing with a horrific tragedy right now, and I only hope that healing happens sooner rather than later. I can't imagine what you guys are going through. My heart goes out to you. So I'm going to pass things over to my players so that they can give introductions, plug anything that they would like, etc., and then we will get this ball rolling. So first up, let's go with Jake.
Hey everybody, I'm Jake from Mini Terrain Domain, and that's where you can find me on the internet at Mini Terrain Domain, Twitch, YouTube, those kind of things, where I run my own mostly D&D games. In fact, if you tune in on Thursday nights, you'll find me sitting in Jeremy's seat, and Jeremy as one of my players. I was going somewhere with that involved a lap and
oh my.
But yeah, tune into Mini Terrain Domain, and you can also find on Friday nights Alan running a game over there that he'll tell you about, I'm sure. But I'm playing Godfarad, the dwarf warlock who is basically a teenager and is really trying to find her place in this weird world amongst these weird companions.
Very, very true. And speaking of weird, Austin.
I knew that was coming, even though I knew it could also apply to everyone, but I knew it was going to be pointed at me. And I'm happy for that. I've taken that as a compliment since third grade. So thank you.
That's the way I
So I'll be playing Bastarad, the very angry bonekin who has lost a whole lot and had to abandon his daughter and is still trying to figure out what to do without his moral compass. So this should be interesting to see where it goes. Excited to play with all of you again.
Excellent. I'm fairly certain that tonight is going to be a pretty big Bastarad session. So I'm excited. All right, next up we have Tim. You read it.
I tried hitting Alt-A and it works now. Yeah. I was so proud of myself. I was like, I'm going to learn the hotkey for this. Failure. So, hi guys, I'm Tim, and I don't know how to mute myself or unmute myself with a hotkey, but what I do know how to do is talk a lot. And if you're interested in learning about D&D, you can check out Tabletop Terrors on YouTube. And if you're interested in getting a free, 80-page character book that gives you a ton of brand new RPG options and a new way to handle race and sub-race, go to absolutetabletop.com, and absolutely free, the Dragon Grin character creation kit is there, and have some fun with that. Those are the two things that I would definitely recommend you check out. And of course, everyone here in the game has some awesome content that they make as well. I actually make content with Jeff over on Tabletop Terror. So I'm really excited about being at the table with everyone tonight.
We're excited to have you here, man. Welcome back. Glad that you're feeling better.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody who mentions a channel link, you should be able to find that in the description of this video down below. Please do go check them out. I also highly recommend them. All right, next up we have Alan.
Hello, yes. My name is Alan, and I can be found on social media at CFTRPG. That's YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook, and Twitch, and all that good stuff. As Jake mentioned, on Fridays, I have a weekly Curse of Strahd campaign going strong, going 38, 39 sessions coming up this week. That is at the Mini Terrain Domain Twitch channel. Tuesdays, you can find me at again on Twitch over at Capri the Gamer channel, where we just started a Pathfinder 2e campaign. And then next Wednesday, for the first time debuting on my own Twitch channel at CFT RPG, I'm going to be starting a Savage Worlds Ravenloft campaign. So taking two things I love, Gothic horror and Savage Worlds, mashing it together with a new crew and everything. So looking forward to putting that out there. So. Oh, and I am playing Haroon, the elven paladin who's on a path of redemption. He is joined up with this crew, one, to have a self-discovery of himself, and then he's definitely being tested and holding true to that oath that he made so long ago. So I'm looking forward to diving back into the world of Momentum.
Yeah, this may or may not have some notes for Haroon in it as well this evening, so I'm sure it'll all be perfectly fine. Perfectly fine. All right. Speaking of perfectly fine, Mr. Jeff Doty.
That is what I strive for, is to make it at least to fine on any given moment. I'm Jeff. I am playing Darian, a rogue on a path of self-discovery and attempting to become better to varying degrees of success at any given session. You can also find me, as Tim mentioned, on Tabletop Terrors. We do videos every week over there about a bunch of different tabletop topics, so check it out if you're so inclined. Looking forward to getting into it.
Excellent. If you guys are not familiar with these players, then you are certainly in for a treat. Every time I sit down with these people, I'm surprised and awed by what they add to the world of Momentum. So I cannot wait to see what's next. So unless there are any questions, I think we will go ahead and do this. Oh, I gotta switch to the art thing. Hold, please. Adventure is a temporary moment. If you are lucky, you survive that moment and are left with nothing but the payment of scars and the treasure of memories. You might return to the home that you left behind. And though this place is unlikely to have changed in your absence, it may not bring you the solace that you hope, the peace that it once did. For it is you who is no longer the same. Those scars, those memories, that adventure has forever changed you. And what you need now to acquire peace is no longer what it once was. You have sailed away from Betrayer's Bay, leaving the port pirate town behind you. But you're not alone. As you continue to sail through the long night, though it is darkness all around you and has been for some months at this point, the ship that follows you, the Marauder's Mirage, this massive vessel, carries with it enormous sails and sprawling dark storm clouds that blot out the light of the stars and the moon above you. So despite it being the long night, despite it being dark, this ship casts its shadow over you as it has followed you for a number of days. what is the current situation on this ship, on your ship? What is the mood like?
Bastrad is kind of trying to pretend that this ship is not really there. Like, not he's not, actively, like, it's not as if he's delusional, but he's just kind of ignoring its presence and trying to, like, act happy. He's trying to enjoy the last, time he has with the crew, knowing that they're headed towards something that is potentially truly horrific and may end all of them. And he's spent a lot of time alone, and so he doesn't want to be alone now, and there are people around him, and I would imagine that with this sort of, looming doom from everyone feels slightly alone, 5 people on a ship all feeling kind of isolated by themselves, and he's just doing what he can to, like, try to break that. Like, we should have some sort of a toast or something to all of us. We're headed off down under. We're off to go where no elf has been, as far as I know, no bonekin. Just kind of trying to look at any bright side to this.
I feel like Sabanos and I would probably comment. Well, let me ask you, Jeff, would Darian have covered the kraken on his arm, or is it visible?
It'd probably still be apparent, yeah.
Because I feel like I would want to sort of not coldly, but like obliviously make observations about it. Similarly to, like, if someone had a cast on and you walked up and started talking about the structure of the bandages and how it's wrapped and why this way it's wrapped is interesting because it was breathed this way, and totally not like acknowledging the point of it or anything, and just really kind of stating facts about it. Jeremy, would there be anything that would kind of like be an odd fact about this that I could maybe learn or glean?
Yeah, so if you can see part of it, like if he's got his sleeve rolled up or whatnot and he can show it to you, the tentacles themselves almost look like a tattoo, but not. It's more or less precise than a tattoo would be, almost like a birthmark, like it's deep in the skin. But it's not the color of a birthmark. It's that black kind of inky color. And all along these tentacles, there are, like, you've seen the scar left of like a puncture wound, like a pockmark.
Yes.
It has those, like where the suction cups on the tentacles would be, all up and down his forearm. These kind of deep pocked scars.
Nice. That's really neat. And those are the comments that I would be making. I'd be making things about how, do you see here how this isn't quite like a tattoo, because a tattoo wouldn't be so close to the dermis. You see, this is pressed further. And look at how bright and vivid it is. It should be dimmer as the ink dries. And it's not healing the way that a tattoo would heal. So interesting. And I'm just like rambling and just, I'm not touching, but I'm getting like strangely close, like looking at it, kind of like looking up and down and sort of, yeah.
If you're so interested, then why don't you take it from me? Maybe it'd suit you better.
Yes. Maybe when we learn more about it. I think that that would be rash right now. Not wise. Wise. Keep it where it is, you know.
Yes, keep it where it is. I'm certain that's what would be best.
See? Now you're thinking.
Every once in a while, various members of our party would notice a light from behind them. They would notice that they are casting a long shadow, whether it's in below decks or on the surface, as if somebody were holding a lantern behind them. And I imagine Sabanos is one that I like to do this to more often than not. When you turn around to see who's behind you holding a light, there's nobody there, but there's still a light being cast from behind you. Having recently discovered that I have these new abilities, I am periodically casting light on various pieces of equipment, on somebody's hip flask, their coin purse, their boot, whatever I can touch without being seen, and always sort of on their back, and then just sort of sneaking away. More just this fascination that what used to be dark and shadow is now light. But it does eventually, if you, Sabanos or Bastarat or somebody, if you find an item, you're like, oh, and you see this thing, you would see that the light, it doesn't just glow. It seems to almost be as if the light is falling away from it like a liquid light, and turning to shadow. It's still got that blending of shadow. But that's the most that I do. Otherwise, I'm probably in much brighter spirits and probably following a Bastarat around, helping to cheerlead to a lesser degree, whenever he's trying to raise people's spirits, just especially if he's offering a toast. Anytime there's an offer to drink, I'm there.
I think Haroon would be kind of self-isolating, as he, maybe just on one of the sides of the ship. And as he's just kind of leaning over the railing, he's got this book that was given to him when he was spending time with Ingvarad and her people. And the book is the teachings that he's been following that has led him on this path of redemption. It's taught him a different way. As before, he was on, as part of the Calendar, he was on an oath of conquest. And now he's put away the sword and try to preserve life rather than take it. So he has this book open and he's been reading these passages, and all the while he's also has the anvil emblem, signifying Ingvarad's deity. Ingvarad, I cannot replace you with these people, these companions of yours. I will try and do my best to hold to your teachings and hold this fellowship together as we make our journey into the depths of hell. Please, if you can hear me, if you can hear my prayers, guide us. Lend us your aid and your wisdom.
It's at that very moment, Haroon, that the boat drops about a foot or two, just kind of straight down. Everybody is thrown to the ground, tossed to the side as the ship kind of catches after this lurch and kind of like shakes from the sudden stop. Haroon, being an elf, being of the people that travel by airship, it might take you a moment because of your current contemplation, but you then realize you must be nearing the edge horizon. Now, you may still be miles away from the edge horizon, but the ether begins to thin out here. You get this close to the edge of the world, and airships don't function very well, which is part of the reason why you had to stop in Betrayer's Bay and have your ship modified so that it was able to now sail on the water. Your guess is that's probably what you're looking at. You probably need to land at sea fairly soon, or else you may not be left with a choice.
Yeah, I think Haroon at this point would, as I imagine, Darian is probably at the helm as he's been flying our ship for the most part during this whole time. I would yell out to Darian, "We need to put her in the water." And I imagine there's some sort of mechanism over by the helm, like a lever or maybe several levers that have to be pulled in order to maybe close some flaps and seal some sails and stuff that would actually make her descend and put her down into the water and actually become buoyant.
Yeah, Darian would let out a shout, "Yep, I'm on it," and then just kind of start yelling out commands to make sure that all those levers and stuff do get pulled while he sort of controls the ship and makes sure that the actual descent is smooth. I guess he has never landed a ship before, but he's good enough at sailing that he can try his best.
Absolutely. Try your best, and let's see what we're going to get. Let's see, this would be a vehicle's air, I would imagine.
Okay, I do not have air vehicles.
I do have vehicle sky.
Yeah.
Can I assist? Can I help give him advantage?
Yeah, so let's do it this way. With Haroon's help and the help of the others who are kind of pulling some tasks, you can roll as if because you have proficiency with vehicles water, right?
Yes, I do.
So treat it as that, and you can also have advantage as well.
Perfect.
I am giving a very concerned look to Bastrad because of the last time we were on an airship that was descending rapidly. It did not go well. And Darian was the only other one that was with us when that airship went down.
Yeah,
Sorry,
Bastrad.
there you go.
Oh, I was gonna say he'll definitely return the look of concern and start kind of like bracing himself against the side. Although he's definitely gonna go up top to try to be like ready to jump off into the water if he has to. If this thing's gonna crash.
What ability score do you use for vehicle checks? Would it be
I don't
dexterity
know what it would normally
or
be,
intelligence?
but this seems like probably a dexterity to try to make sure that the ship is balanced. It's not listing to one side whenever it touches down. Makes sense.
Alrighty, perfect. So with advantage, it's going to be a dirty 20.
Okay, excellent. Even though you may have never done this before, Darian, the principles that you and Haroon have discussed are sound. You are convinced, and you guide the ship into the water with very little bump. Before long, it has settled. You can feel the ship kind of almost exhale as it kind of eases its weight to be carried now by the water instead of holding itself up. As you do that, Darian, just as the keel kind of starts to part the water, you can feel beneath your skin on your forearm, those tentacles feel like they're writhing, and the place where the puckers are kind of sting a little with pain. And just as that is kind of beginning in your forearm, a voice inside your head speaks to you, the voice of Catalys Varn. What are you doing, Darian Black? What is the meaning of this?
Darian will like hear the voice, and I imagine like instinctively like look around before he'll like notice that it's in his head. I don't know that he's been communicated with this way very often, if ever. I think it'd be a strange experience, and he'd sort of like think out loud to himself, like "What?" As if not being sure if that'll get through or not.
There's a pause and then a reply. Why are you descending, Darian Black? I thought you had a mission.
We do have a mission. That mission requires a descent.
Be very careful, Darian Black. Be very careful. The voice then seems to leave you be. The writhing and the pain then kind of stops and comes to a standstill.
I think Darian would be like visibly uncomfortable to anybody who would be nearby. He might even like instinctively like grab at his arm as if trying to like scratch an itch that's like too far beneath the surface to reach. But he won't say anything. He'll just kind of like shake his head, trying to like shake the voice from his mind, and then try to make sure that the ship is actually good.
It is good. It has righted itself, settled in, and you are now sailing much more the style that you're used to, back on the water. Bastarad, Haroon, and Darian, the three of you realize that where you have touched down, you are near a place called Thricestrike. This place is a pretty good spot to land. You could head there for a respite. You know that you would be safe there. It is kind of neutral ground, a place of it's kind of a sacred place, a peace place where a lot of truces have been made in the past between different parties. And incidentally, Bastarad, Haroon, and Darian, the three of you know this because not far away from Thricestrike is a place called the Hand of Tarlok, a valley that holds two bonekin villages, one called Akun and the other called Tarlok, where Ingvarad and Bastarad are from. Go ahead, Austin.
Oh, okay. I heard someone else on mute. Yeah, Bastarad will be the first to say. I don't know if those people following will allow it, but this would be a good place for us to rest. It's not far from home, really. Actually, it's you kind of look over, little wistful. But, he thinks of Ingvarad and trying to explain to the people back home what happened to her, and he just immediately shuts up, stops talking about where they are.
No, I think you're right, Bastarot. Perhaps it would be good for us to stop in Thricestrike. And we should. I think it would be good to return to the Bonkin village.
He tries to compose himself and not react to this, but if anyone was actually looking at him, they would see him kind of deflate just slightly at you saying that. But he won't argue. He does see the value in it.
And I would imagine, Bostrad, it might even cross your mind, however you may react to this realization, that it would probably at least be a good idea to let Vasharan, Ingvarad in Dothkari's father, know what has befallen both of his daughters.
Yeah. And honestly, what one thing Basrad immediately thought of was that he'd like to leave a message with one of them for Vidaris if she either returns or if they're able to get word to her once the long night is over, just in case he doesn't come back. He'll actually, like, upon kind of realizing that he has so much to say, he'll return to his quarters to start drafting a letter for her to give to someone.
Okay, so it sounds like the plan is indeed to set sail towards Thricestrike and come ashore. Is that correct? Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. All right. You sail on for a small time before you come into view of the place known as Thricestrike. It is 3 monumental swords that are plunged, tipped down into the earth, and have eroded the way that Colossiah artifacts do. But they have still stood the test of thousands of years. And again, this is a place of peace. Truces have been forged here through the centuries. It's a sacred place, and you come ashore nearby, a place for you to anchor your ship and take a small shore boat. You're able to beach and come ashore, and almost the instant that you are ashore, there is an individual that begins to make their way towards you. You can tell by her size that she is a bonekin, as well as the silhouette of her horns. And you realize as this barefoot bonekin approaches that her eyes glow blue. Bastarad, you may be the only person who knows who this is, only by, like, reputation. This bonekin is known as the Oathkeeper, and she serves as a high priestess here at Thricestrike. So as she is waiting for you on the shore, and as you are rowing in that direction, is there anything that you guys want to discuss or take care of before you make land?
I did have a question, Jeremy. And with all the vast wealth that was on their on the ship, was there any diamonds?
Absolutely.
How many diamonds? Could I get as many diamonds as? Okay, go, roll what?
Roll 2d4.
Okay. You got it. That's a 2 on the first roll and a 3, so 5.
So there's 23. No, I'm just kidding. Yes, 5.
All right, fair enough. So yeah, I would make sure to put 5 diamonds in on my person before departing on the ship.
Okay, absolutely.
Bastarad would turn very seriously to everyone, and with his voice low, say, "While we are speaking to the Oathkeeper, speak only truth. Keep your hands off your weapons. Attempt no violence. And if you can, keep violence and violent thoughts out of your mind and heart." And he just kind of steels himself, readying himself for seeing, for speaking to her.
I feel like Sabanos would make a comment, just alluding to how, like, oh, well, that sounds very interesting. Like, just so excited for something so strange sounding.
Okay. You beach your shore boat and are able to disembark, stepping out onto solid ground for the first time in a while. Even before you got to Betrayer's Bay, it had been some time before you had seen solid, non-swamp bog type ground that wasn't floating in the sky. So you take a moment to kind of reacclimate from no longer being in the air at sea, and the Oathkeeper simply waits at the head of the path that would lead up to Thricestrike itself, patiently holding this enormous halberd type weapon that she just leans on and waits for you to approach.
Bastarad will, once he has kind of regained his land legs, and it takes him a moment. He's not used to this transition. Everything has been a little more unsteady, and this steady ground underneath him feels good, but it takes a moment to acclimate to. And he'll approach, kind of waiting till everyone seems like they're ready to follow, and lead them to her. And despite his sort of lack of faith, he does hold a reverence for the people that have devoted themselves to these things, and he does understand that there is power in it. And he'll bow low in a respectful gesture, and he'll kind of touch his horn in sort of a bone-kin greeting, and he'll say, "We offer you peaceful passage." And, we request peaceful passage. Sorry. It's been a while since I've seen one of my kind. I'm a little tripped up. Apologies. It's been a while since I've spoken in any of the old ways.
She kind of stares down at you, these blue orbs that kind of float in the blackness of her eyes, turning downward towards you as you speak. And she reaches out to you with her other hand and kind of just gently touches one horn after the other, as kind of a return, a reciprocal gesture. And she says, "You have been away from home for a long time, Bastarad. There is much grief that hangs upon your shoulders."
He drops his head just a bit and he says, "And I fear I I may not return again for a long time, if at all. But I am here now.
You have made your way here under your own power, and the power of those who journey with you. Perhaps, if they continue to journey alongside you, perhaps you will all return. It is for you to decide.
Where they go, I go.
Do you bring peace, or do you bring... her eyes turn upwards to look towards the storm ship that is floating above you. Or do you bring trouble?
We ourselves bring only peace. There are those that follow us whose intentions are unclear, and he'll kind of glance towards Darian, but they should cause no trouble while we are here. What they want has already been promised to them and will be delivered.
An oath that was taken by him. She kind of eyes Darian. A binding contract.
I think Darian will glance over to Bastrad to he's not exactly sure who this person is, so we'll kind of eye for permission to speak. Not sure how much speaking would be out of turn.
Bastrad nods, just as if to say, go ahead.
Yeah, he'll kind of just overshare, I think, and pull his sleeve up, expecting this person just to know what that is, because they seem sort of mystic and mysterious in some sort of way. And we'll just say, yes, I'm the one they're after, and they already know they have to wait.
I see. You can see there is recognition. Her facial expression doesn't overly change much, but there is the barest hint of recognition when she looks upon this mark on your arm. The mark of the Kraken is a difficult thing to bear. It exacts a steep price if it is broken. Beware.
I don't have much intent on breaking it yet.
Where does your journey take you next, Bastrad?
Home. I must bring news. Sad news, I'm afraid.
Grave news indeed. Our people have lost much over the last months, and I fear there will be much more that we will lose.
He looks up without saying anything, but she can see just agreement in his eyes. He knows that's true.
If you wish it, you may take food and drink before you depart. You are welcome here.
I thank you for your hospitality. And he'll bow again. We would be honored.
She kind of gestures back behind her, almost like opening the path to you and your party. You walk up the path to see Thricestrike rising up above you, touching the sky. And you can tell that it contains a circle in the middle where there have likely been many fires, and it's kind of ringed with these stone altar type features where many things to have been pinned and hands to have been shaken. And not far away from these swords, there's a small... it's more than a shrine. It's like a hovel, a nice little hut that's not overly large, and serves as kind of the Oathkeeper's domicile, as well as a place for people to offer prayer or offerings of some kind as they pass through. So you're able to settle in there, and she feeds you something. It's not anything grand. It's probably some kind of gruel or stew of some kind, and some kind of probably very weak wine, I would imagine.
Bastard eats it as if it's caviar. I mean, he's savoring every moment of this, being with this person that he has always kind of wanted to meet. But it's like, you're being served oatmeal by the Pope, in a way. But he'll, as everyone's eating their gruel, he'll look around and say, "Do you know why this place has brokered so many peace treaties and agreements? 3 warring Colossiahs back in the early days when things were broken and fractured. They met here for a conference. Their armies had ravaged everything. There was death and destruction everywhere, and they realized their creation could stand no more of this devastation. And here it was that they laid down their swords, striking 3 separate swords in the ground, laying down arms, and that's when things turned around for this world." And he looks up at the swords with this odd reverence of someone who used to truly believe in something, and he says, "And while they were still alive, they kept things peaceful, in balance, all because of the agreement brokered here, in this place."
Jeremy, based on what everybody's, well, especially Bastarad, is saying and how they're acting and the things that he was mentioning about, basically keep your mind pure, like as though the, this person, this oath keeper, can sort of read minds or knows things or is privy to information that probably a mere mortal wouldn't be. What I would like to do is I would like to find a way to not necessarily interrupt, but like lurk and look, basically look conspicuously like I'm kind of trying to get her attention. But I'm not trying to be fully oblivious. I do have some level of decorum. I'm not going to be blatantly foolish in this place that's so awe-inspiring. But I am trying to get her attention, or their attention, or its attention.
It's not long before you can tell that she understands the subtlety and will make her way over to you. "It would appear that you have questions for me."
Yes, I am. And you would see a different level of focus from Sabanos. There is not a stray thought. It's focus and clarity like a weapon pointed. And he says, "You seem to know things that no one else could know. Do you know anything of the person or people who caused Belorion to fall. Any information would be invaluable.
You have a strange mind. It is difficult to see. You have a lot of control. I wonder if maybe it is too much. I cannot tell you everything. But what I can tell you is that you could seek answers with a bonekin by the name of Karast.
Karast.
If you follow Bastarad, he will take you to him. Another key player in this atrocity is already dead. He was the sovereign oracle of the elves, the supposed priest of Belorion himself, sovereign oracle of the city. He betrayed his own people for profit and for gain.
And you can see Sabanos like doing calculations, not crying, not becoming more emotional, but the focus is now. And I mean, I think that she would even be able to hear and feel and see those immense just the rapid permutations of all of the evidence that even that information, Sabanos is cross-referenced it against everything he knows about the oracles, who was the oracle before them, who stands to benefit, who is going to be, in this vacuum of power, what, like all these, but she would know that even though he doesn't say it, there are thoughts of thanks, though he like pushes them aside as though they're not important.
She seems to understand that now, at least, that your mind is racing, and that it's implied, at least. And she'll just kind of give a slight nod of her head and go back to what she was doing.
Perfect. And Sabanos would continue by just disengaging unceremoniously, not to be rude. He's just totally oblivious. And he just sort of now is like he's doing he's mumbling and he's counting things on his fingers and he's writing things in the dirt and like all kinds of stuff like that.
How far away were the three swords from this shrine?
100 feet, probably no more.
Okay. Yeah, I think Haroon would, in Bonekin, thank the High Priestess for her hospitality and would make it, as he is not Bonekin and does not have horns, he would make gestures that I believe the Bonekin would have maybe taught other races, since they don't have horns, other races gestures that they could mimic that would imply the same. So he would thank her, and Bonekin ask if once again if he could ascend to the to Thricestrike.
She studies you for a moment, Haroon, these kind of glowing orbs of deep blue. This is not your first time to these lands.
No, High Priestess. It is not.
Though you come now under different circumstances, ones of peace this time. You two seem to have much grief hung about your shoulders. But yes, the answer to your question is yes. You may go to see what you may find at Thricestrike.
And I gesture, thanking her once again. I must pay my respects to Thricestrike. You do not have to accompany me. It will not take long if you wish to stay here.
Pastor, his eyes grow kind of wide at the prospect. Like, he never thought, like, oh, I might be in a position where I can actually go see, like, maybe even touch the sword. And he's like, no, I think I have the time. We might as well while we're here.
Very well.
Although, I'll catch up with you. You may want a little time alone. I understand that. And he'll turn back to talk to Sabanos while Haroon sets off, maybe, or waits. I'm not sure what Haroon would do, but excuse me, Sabanos. Excuse me. And he'll see that he's still like lost in these
I
calculations.
was gonna say, yeah, it probably
He's
takes
just,
a good
he's
three
not
times.
Yeah.
Like,
No, Sabanos. I couldn't help but overhearing. I feel like we may have skipped some of the normal introduction and informational conversation that might accompany inviting someone to come with us on such a dangerous mission. And I heard you were concerned with the destruction of Belorion. We may not have filled you in on this, but we came from the city of Belorion. Not originally, but we were there after the fall. And we did discover much about the cause, and that is the reason for our trip down under now. We are chasing a devious sect called the Throes of Sunset. They are stealing Colossiah bone and performing hideous rituals with it, and we believe this is the cause of Belorion's. And you kind of like,
I when you first started that conversation, you could tell that Sabanos was not, dismissive in a way that was mean, but when you're talking about how, oh, we didn't follow normal social protocol, he probably would even say like, oh, that's fine. I don't care for those things. It's pointless. It's pageantry. And then when you say what you said about like, hey, so we know about what you're looking for. Same. That's sort of like laser focus. And he lets you continue and he lets you finish. And then he pauses for probably about 2 seconds. And as though no one else was there, like it was just you and him on the planet, he goes, tell me everything you know. And you don't literally have to do that in character, but that's just his train of thought of like, okay, great. Like, you're the guy I've been looking for and I've been next to you the whole time. I mean, yeah, the swords, that's fine. And, that lady was nice, but you have exactly what I need. And so I don't know how would you respond to that? And we don't have to like role play it out if it's
Sure,
would take
but
too long.
yeah, Bastrad will accommodate. Well, it depends. Actually, I think it depends on like is Haroon waiting or is Haroon heading off to have his pilgrimage solo?
I think you'd wait. I mean,
Okay, yeah. So
I
after
don't think you'd be waiting long.
after that, then like Bastrad would look over and say like, I promise I will explain absolutely everything we know to you, but you do understand this is kind of a big moment where we are. And,
Oh yes,
you know,
yes.
he speaks to him like he's kind of like a little child in a way, where he's like, you know what's going on in terms of like everyone else around you, though, right? There are other people. Okay. So anyway,
I love that, and like the kid who's saying like, but why can't we go swimming? And it's like,
right, like
yeah.
So like, I promise I will tell you everything. And then he'll head off to talk to head up to the Thricestrike with Haroon.
And I think that the only reason why that is not something that is met with some sort of like, well, no, you have some sort of pushback, is because now you just keep hear him saying, throes of sunset, the throes of sunset, the throes of sun, and like scanning the database for like anything he would know about that. And so you just kind of walk away and he's back doing his weird calculations.
Okay. Is there anything in particular, Haroon and or Bastrad, that you would like to do as you approach these three not quite evenly spaced but almost evenly spaced blades that scrape the sky above you, and in the center is a place where you know there is not only thousands of years of history and tradition, but specifically 1,000 or more years of truces and peace and vows and oaths that are undertaken here in this very spot that you're now standing.
Oh, I would imagine coming up to here that perhaps there is kind of like a brazier that maybe has several sticks or irons that are in the fire, and in the center of these three swords is a pyre. And he would take one of these irons from the brazier and he would put it to this pyre, lighting it, signaling that he's basically opening, a channel, or opening up his consciousness to the Colossiahs, to these three who called a truce so many aeons ago.
Bastrad will, as he first approaches, reach into his bag and pull out a small box, the incense box that he always has with him, that Vidaris made for him, and he'll set it near the pyre, kneel, and start to burn incense in this burner, and he says a prayer of peace for his daughter, and peace for the tormented soul of his wife, who he still believes is being tortured in this eternal hell of ether, and peace for Ingvarad wherever she may be, and that one seems to sting almost the most, because he knows Vidaris is at least getting some protection and education where she is, and he knows that there was nothing he could do to stop what happened to his wife. But Ingvarad is still potentially out there somewhere. She's lost, but she's not, maybe not lost forever. It's hard to tell. But as he thinks about her, he'll turn his eyes to Haroon, and he'll say, Can I tell you something I've never told anyone?
Of course.
This is shameful, but when I first approached Dathkari's father about a proposal of marriage, it was not her that I had asked to wed. It was her sister, Ingvarad. But he shakes his head. He turned me down. He offered me Dathkari. She was the younger daughter. She wasn't as high in the church at the time. She didn't have the same potential. It wouldn't have been such a waste to give her to a farmer and a parochial leader. I wasn't good enough for their family to let me have the older daughter, the bright shining star. Ingvarad was, well, you knew who she was. You know what she was. She was something wholly unique. And every day since Dathkari left, I've thought, is that why? Did I never love her enough because I never really loved her? I just grew accustomed to her. She was there. She was the one that I had. We had Vidaris, who I love. I care about more than anything. But Ingvarad will never know. She's somewhere now. But I don't think I'm ever going to see her again, even if she does survive it.
Haroon, silent as you're speaking, and nods. Rubs, when you're done speaking, kind of rubs his head rubs his hand over his bald head. It seems the fates it seems our fates are intertwined. It seems that the same ship has sailed past us both in the night. My journey to these lands long ago was one of death, destruction, conquest. I led the Kalendari here, and many bonekin fell under my command. Until Karast and his tribe my men were beaten. I was captured. But Karast sought peace and chose not to end my life. No, instead, I stayed within his tribe for a year. And Ingvarad, his apprentice at the time, was tasked with teaching me the ways of peace. She was reluctant at first. Well, you know how she is. But as days became weeks, and weeks became months, we found each other. But I could not stay. I had to return to the Calendari. I had to see if these teachings, if I could bring them back to my people. And finally, as he motions to the three swords here, bring peace as there once was so long ago. It was here all that time ago, and he unsheathes the sword, which, when first meeting him, although he had a sheath, he had no sword, and it's only recently that he put this sword into its sheath, being on the ship, but now he unsheathes it once more. It was at these very three swords that I took my oath of redemption, and I swore that I would never draw this sword again. I do not want to break that oath. So he plunges the sword into the ground here. I will not draw this sword again. And Ingvarad she will be back. And he will take the anvil emblem off of it and just from its leather thong, just tie it around the hilt and the crossguard of this sword that he's put into the ground.
Bastrad watches this gesture in silence and turns back to Haroon. When you first joined us, I must admit, I had such hate of you. The robes you wore, the way Ingvarad looked at you, I could see it. There was something in her eyes there when she looked at you that was never and could never be in her eyes for me. But here, in this place, I need to say I'm sorry. I'm sorry if I treated you cruelly. If I let that hatred out. I've been so angry for so long, and I'm trying. But he'll extend his hand to Haroon. He says, you have become part of my family, and I would like never to hold hate in my heart again if I can. And I'd like that to start here.
Haroon would look at your hand and then look you in the eye and then clasp, forearm to forearm. I would gladly call you brother.
At that moment, both of you, Bastrad and Haroon, notice a spark of light that kind of illuminates the stone around you. Looking up, you actually see like a magenta-colored star shooting across the sky. And as it does so, it disappears off in the distance behind a shape that both of you are familiar with. Not far in the distance, you see the Hand of Tarlok, the mountain range that you know surrounds the valley that holds the villages where you will head in a short while. As if illuminating your path.
We should return to the others. I feel we may be needed sooner rather than later. And he'll keep his eye on this path of this comet.
Much agreed. Let's make haste.
Upon returning to the area where the rest of the group is, Bastrad's first thought would be to go to Darien and just ask, do we need to have a word with, kind of gesture towards the giant ship looming in the distance. Do we need to let them know where we're going and why? Or
before on the ship, when we were first landing down into the water, I heard a voice come into my head. Catalyst, the one who, and I point to his arm where the mark is, in case you didn't know his name. Apparently, he can talk to me through this or whatever. So I think if he has something to say, he'll say it first. I hope.
Very well.
At some point in this time that we're here, I would have, especially when Bastrad kind of told us the story about Thricestrike, I would have asked you, Bastrad, who were...
You muted yourself partway through that, Jake.
I was using press to talk, and apparently if you click off, it goes away. I would have asked you, Bastrad, who were they? Who were the three Colossiahs?
There's much disagreement about which three Colossiah were leading the armies of the gods, but in the Hand of Tarlok, it's generally agreed that the god of the stars, the god of the sky, and the god of dreams, Arinavat, Tarlok, and Irashara.
And I would just listen to that. And then at some point, I like to imagine that as Bastarad and Haroon are leaving to go back to the others, from behind one of these massive swords, Katvarat appears. Not having been eavesdropping, in all likelihood, probably not even paying attention to what they were saying. But I've been wandering around studying these three massive swords. And if you'll allow, Jeremy, this is sort of playing with the flavor of the Warlock Pact of the Blade. From behind each of these blades, just spending time during this, tracing my fingers, my hands across them, looking up these massive towering blades, and just some of that liquid light and shadow seeping out of my hands and sort of almost creating these real fine trace lines around each blade, and memorizing their shape so that when I summon packed blades, I can summon them in the shape of these swords.
Yeah, and I envisioned that when your lights and your dark tracers kind of follow the edges of these swords, where there are missing pieces or pockmarks or bent edges, it follows what the sword would have originally looked like, instead of the damage that is now present ages and ages past.
Yeah, and I just imagine just sort of locking that that description. Honestly, there's a part of Godvarad that wishes she could actually make one of these a pact weapon, but knows that's, impossible to own a weapon of the gods. And this isn't just in Godvarad's mind, this isn't just an act of duplication or just blatant copying. Even the acknowledgement that these belong to the gods shows it's a bit of an homage to Ingvarad and her teachings, because Godvarad had previously been very skeptical about the Colossiah, their existence and their importance. But hearing Bastarad tell this tale, she had become fascinated with them.
How much of the additional conversation that took place between Bastarad and Harun did Godvarad overhear?
I'd like to roll for that, because honestly, she's pretty. She wasn't there to eavesdrop, so
Right.
If she heard anything, it would have been incidental. So I don't know if you want that to be like a perception.
Yeah, let's call it a perception.
That's an average stat for me, so I'm gonna roll my Atcon die.
That one is
Got a
notorious.
17
Nice.
on perception, 16 on the die.
So yeah, I imagine that you probably missed the very beginning of the conversation, but you caught the majority of what was said, including the the bombshell that Bastarad revealed.
So the face that I actually made here in my window when Austin was saying that, from behind the sword, as all this tracing of the sword is going on, there's probably a moment where Godvarad makes that face and just kind of stops what she's doing and just goes peering out from behind, just like, oh, and then maybe started actively listening a little bit more.
And Godvarad, being a teenage girl, is just waiting for the chance to tell anybody this news. Excellent. Okay.
Oh
Is
yeah,
there anything?
and it would
Oh, go
it
ahead.
would probably be I'm gonna roll real quick. Even okay, yeah. Whenever I get a chance to find Darian alone, I'd be like, Darian, and just it would probably come out as this jumbled mess of like a teenager explaining something in that very fast way of talking. Oh my gosh, you're not gonna believe this, and just blah, 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 and just spew it all out. And then once it's out, whether you heard it or not, just be like, oh my gosh.
I imagine it's one of those situations where like the message like gets confused because you're talking so fast and you know how it's supposed to be like in your head, but like the words are like not quite keeping up, and Darian's like wait, sorry, all that again, but like half as fast.
And then I would sort of just look at you with that just eye roll, and then too simply explain. Bastarad, Ingvarad. What? And then Harun and Ingvarad? What? With a little bit more going in there, but the giving you less words.
I imagine the resulting is somewhat like just the distracted dad, like just like letting the teenage girl just ramble of just like at the end of all that was be like, oh, interesting. Like that's his response.
I just suddenly got this image of Darian, Haroon, and Bastarad are got Varad's three dads. Sabanos is sort of like the weird uncle.
Yeah, he's the Dave. He's totally the Dave Coulier.
Cut it out.
Cut it out.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Perfect. Okay. Is there anything else that you would like to try to accomplish or do before you start out on your way to the Hand of Tarlok, to this valley?
Bastrad would just like to speak one last time to the Oathkeeper and just say, like, we thank you for honoring us with this meal and honoring us with passage to Thricestrike. That was truly a powerful moment. I appreciate you allowing it. And he'll bow again.
I hope that it brought you peace, Bastrad. That it has removed some of the weight of the mantle you now carry.
He doesn't respond with words, but he looks up with a little bit more fire in his eyes, a little bit happier fire maybe, or lighter fire. I don't know what that.
And do be warned, Bastarad. There are other people here who likewise have taken on a heavy mantle. There is much grief in our world, and your people are no stranger to that. Tread lightly with them.
He'll nod and turn to leave.
Excellent. So, you have taken your respite. You've taken some stew, some wine, weak as it may be, taken a load off your feet for a while, before you now set out towards the Hand of Tarlok. That's where we're going to go ahead and take our break. So 5 to 10 minutes, go to the bathroom, refill your drinks, kiss your spouse, smoke them if you got them, etc., etc. Thank you very much. This has been fantastic so far, and I can't wait until we peel back some more of these layers and get to the heart of what's kind of going on here in this part of the world. Thank you very much. If you are tuning in this evening, whether you're catching it live with us here or you are watching in the future, it's sincerely appreciated. So sit tight. We will be right back. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Thank you very much for tuning in this evening, whether you are watching live or later on. It is very much appreciated. I am excited to get back to this. So, without further ado, the five of you have left the towering swords of Thricestrike behind you. The long night persists, but even still, the unmistakable shape looming in the distance of this upturned hand, these 5 fingers turned skyward, the hand of Tarlok, lies ahead of you. For a few of you, this is the first time you've ever seen this particular landmass, this strange sight. What is your reaction currently as you're making your way closer to it?
Kadvarad just has this sort of realization, thinking about the swords at Thricestrike and their immense size, and then seeing this massive hand rising out of the ground, like just looking at it and going, oh, like only just putting together, if the sword's that big, how much bigger was the hand and therefore the individual that wielded that massive sword. And there's this whole new level of awe that actually just makes her speechless.
There's a bizarre phenomenon amongst the Colossiahs that are spread throughout Momentum, and that is a fairly large variety of size. And nobody seems to really have a solid explanation as to why, although various different religions have their own theories and stories as to why that is the case. And this hand, the hand of Tarlok, would have to have been one of the largest Colossiah to have existed, certainly.
Now, of course, you see, based on the shape of the mountain and the size of the hand, the swords we saw back there, they were of course much smaller. Now, the way that Bonekin legend tells it, the god of the toil grew bigger and stronger as time went on. Like I said, those swords have been there for millennia, and as time went on, the toil and the work of the Bonekin god Tarlok, it grew him to this massive size where he was, as far as I'm aware, the largest of the Colossiah. And he says this with a bit of pride, like this. There's this Bonekin pride, and like nobody's bigger than our god, and he's in all the important stories. Like, he is the earth. So, but he'll like kind of say, like, so obviously, this is when he died, it was much later than when the swords were planted. That's why we had such a prosperous world for so long.
The biggest besides themed, right?
The half stack god, you mean?
The god of the underworld that rests the entirety of the world upon its back.
Well, in the underworld, what I've heard is the tunnels are very small. You don't want to hit your head. So
she just gives you a sideways smile and pats you playfully on the well, I guess with your height discrepancy, the hip, and your a buckle on your belt starts glowing as I cast light on it.
He's like taken aback at first. Oh, it's hopeful. It's dark.
You all continue towards this upturned palm, these fingers curled skyward, and you end up passing between two of the fingers where the land that has formed up around these remains has weathered and eroded away into this entrance, this pass that would let you enter the actual valley beyond. And you do so, closing ever quicker towards the village of Akun. And as you do so, you start seeing grave markers, outlying signs of where people have been put to rest in the Bonekin Manor. Haroon, you see familiar graves, those of slain Bonekin warriors, as well as those members of the Kalendari who would never leave this valley. The people who followed you here. Though they fought one another, these elves were laid to rest beside these Bonekin. There was no difference in the respect that the Bonekin who buried them paid to these dead. Continue onward.
As we pass them, Bastrad will just say, "It is customary in Bonekin lands when you pass a grave site, try to think of life and the work still to be done."
You make your way past these graves and begin seeing the fields of winter that kind of surround the village. And though they are currently not planted, you can see that the beasts of the Bonekin have been turned out for winter, left to pasture. These creatures are known as the Karatar, and they are effectively these large horses that also bear horns, much like their Bonekin riders, and they are used as beasts of burden, as well as a food source, especially whenever times are lean. They are just grazing, as I said, and you can see that, especially for, I would think, Bastrad and likely Haroon as well, something feels different about Akun as you approach the outskirts. There's just something that's a little changed, and it's hard to put your finger on just what it is yet.
Keep your heads about you. Something seems off.
I agree. I have a sense of unease.
Sabanos would say, "When do we get to meet this Kurast fellow?" Like, sort of out of nowhere, like very not at this moment. He probably shouldn't be saying that. Oblivious to everything else that's going around and the tension and the interactions.
I imagine that we will meet with Karast, as he is the high priest of the Bonken of this of Kun. We will most likely pay our respects to him upon entering the village.
Yes. Then let's continue quickly. Then yes.
You enter the edge kind of the village proper, and you can see that Bostrad, though things feel a little off, it appears, as you left it, the long houses of the Bonekin, these massive stretching buildings set here on the forest floor beneath the canopy of these ancient trees, and many families oftentimes live in one house. I would imagine that at least for some time that you may have lived in one of these very longhouses here in Akun. Perhaps the house of Vasharand, the father of Ingvarad and Dothkari. People are kind of going about their daily routines, even though the long night still persists, and they are noticing you, Bostrad, as well as the unusual, perhaps, company that you have with you. And it's definitely starting to kind of become a little bit of a murmur through the people of the town as they see you return. Where are you headed?
Astrod realizes that despite the awful conversation he's going to have with Vasharand, he doesn't have to yet, especially if he acquiesces to his companion's desire to talk to Karast. So he's going to try to seek out this leader and try to find out what he knows and let him know what we are aware of and the danger that approaches.
The rest of you saying or spying anything in particular as you enter this Bonekin village? Perhaps, again, some of you for the first time.
I feel like this is probably well, and I'll ask you, Jeremy. So, how common were bonekin? Where I was from, so to speak. So, on Belorion and those kinds of things.
I imagine that you have definitely seen a few. I don't know, maybe a dozen or two here and there. But Bonekin aren't typically a very traveled people. A lot of them die very close to where they were born. It's kind of their typical way. But those that do adventure out are they tend to be very noteworthy. Not only because of their stature, but also because when they do decide to take up weapons, they make incredible warriors.
Perfect. And I think that's probably what I would make note of and maybe even talk out loud. Not necessarily to Bostrad, but just sort of pinpointing the fact that, like, wow, you're really noteworthy. I didn't realize the rest of your people were so common. Like, because all the bonekin I've seen, kind of as you say, I mean, they're a bit extraordinary and they've traveled, but I had no control group. So most of them I've seen have been like that. And so immediately I'm like, and maybe that's what I say. And I don't say it rudely necessarily, but just like, oh, it's how quaint, how common everyone is. You're far better than most of them. Like, I would just kind of say that to Bastrad, like, oh, okay, I get it. You're special.
He'll almost not fully process what you say as he responds. He just says, I was alone here and needed to be alone to find companionship. And just kind of offhandedly, like, he's just like weirdly honest now, like, yeah, I was just really lonely here, so had to take off.
And I
like
would say
not really
something-
understanding like that you were like what you were saying about him.
Sure. And I feel like in return, Sabanos would, talking about the loneliness, he would say something like, "Oh yes, I can understand how some people would not enjoy that. I mean, I don't. Not really. Maybe I do. I don't." And then he starts kind of thinking about loneliness and the actual definition factually of like, well, could you really be alone if you were with all these people, and how could you be lonely when you weren't the only one here? And just, but again, he's done with you. Thank you.
So imagine Bastard would know where this leader, where Karast would his home would be. So I'll lead them there because it seems like it's during the day for these people. I've kind of lost track of our foolproof when am I hungry for breakfast time tracking device. I think that was before Sabanos got on board. So that was a plan that we had. So I don't know if it's like daytime, but I'm assuming it's daytime for these people because they're walking around. So I don't think we'll be barging in on the guy in the middle of the night. So I'd like to go seek him out.
Yeah, it's definitely the kind of daytime activities portion of the day. But again, like you said, knowing the hour, there's no possible way. And the long night has dragged on. Now probably nearing its third month, and is a little worrisome that it hasn't shown any sign of like the sky starting to lighten or change color at all. And the weather has continuously gotten colder and colder, which currently it is a summer winter, so it's supposed to be one of the most mild of the winters that happens during the long nights. However, the frosts are starting to set in, and people are growing concerned. So yeah, you know that Karast has a longhouse closer to the edge of town, near where the actual Colossiahs remains are, where Akun's actual corpse lies, just outside of town. So it's easy to direct your friends towards his domicile. And as you're nearing it, Bastrad, you actually see one or two people that it kind of gives you like a little bit of a double take. You realize that they're from your village, from Tarlok, not from Akun. So it's kind of a little strange because they're familiar, but in a different place than you might expect them to be. And as you approach the front steps of the temple building, a bonekin steps out, but it's not Karast. It's Karasan, the priest from Tarlok, your village. Actually, at one time, was your mentor. He looks a little taken aback.
As does Bastrad. He's sort of shocked to see him, and he has fairly mixed emotions about the situation. But after a brief moment, he will just move forward towards him with both arms extended. Just try to embrace him in a hug, and he'll say, "It's been so long. I'm so happy to see you, Kara-san. How have you been?"
Basterad? He kind of takes a moment, and then will put his hands around you again to kind of welcome your embrace. What are you doing here?
It's a long story. He'll kind of look around. Where is Karast?
Karast, you've been gone for a long time, Basterad. Karast he's been in meditation for almost a month now. No one can wake him. Basterad, the village of Tarlock is no more. We grew too weak to sustain ourselves, and in the light of Karast, not forsaking his duties, but for his trance, myself and the remaining villagers of Tarlock have come here and joined the people of Akun. We live together now in peace and harmony. But there's nothing more of our village. It's been abandoned.
But how? There were so many strong farmers. The fields were fertile when I left.
People have begun to turn away from hope. Some have taken, well, they have made the decision to not continue. Others have gone on, much like yourself, to find answers or some shred of hope or possibility to an end to this.
Arazan, we may have found that. We may have truly found it. We may have found what's causing this.
How? How is that possible?
Can maybe come inside. It's
Please.
This may be disturbing for some people to hear.
How rude of me. Please. And he kind of bows and backs up. And if you would, please, Basterad, describe to me what is the proper way to enter a Bonekin residence or place of worship?
So there's generally a large covered a hinged crate that sits outside of the entrance of most homes. Most, maybe not every home, but most like major places of gathering. And upon entering, Bastrad takes the Colossiah bone dagger that he carries with him, and he unhinges it from his belt, and he sets it inside this large box that is outside the entrance to this longhouse. And he'll kind of turn to his comrades and say, "It is customary to enter someone's domicile unarmed. I promise you no harm will come to you here. Bonekin are peaceful people. And just please state your peaceful intent." And he'll, as he turns towards the doorway, stand up straight, and he'll whisper just a very quiet prayer under his breath, and say, I intend to conduct myself with peaceful intent, and walk through the door.
Is anybody not headed inside?
I will Take the only two weapons that I have on me, which are a pair of daggers on my belt. And I'll just undo the dagger belt and follow Bostarod's example. I didn't hear what he said as a prayer, or rather, Rod didn't. So she just lightly mumbles under her breath, in the hopes that it passes for fulfilling this. Just sort of a and follows Bostarod in.
Yeah, and there's no magic involved with this, so I would imagine like you might think that there's some like entrance spell that you're having to like pass through, but it's just this like in this moment of expected resistance, there's just nothing, and it's just more of a like slight oath just to be kind and peaceful while inside.
Okay. Karasan, as the rest are kind of following suit and entering behind you, Bostrad, Karasan has kind of pulled you off to the side, just inside the threshold, and he says, "It is good to see that you have not forgotten all of our ways. I know that you were having a crisis of faith when you left. Have you found that?"
He thinks for a moment and says, I traveled for a long time with Ingvarad, and she showed me that I was wrong to think that everything I had learned was wrong. I don't know if I believe, but I think I'm on the way to finding some sorts of answers.
He nods, kind of satisfied at your answer, and when you have brought up Ingvarad, you can see he kind of is looking over the rest of your group. So you did continue to travel with Ingvarad. I was hoping that would be good for you, for your faith. But I do not see her. Where is she?
It is part of our long story, and not a particularly happy part. The short answer is that we don't entirely know where she is. The long answer is she was taken from us, and we hope that where we're going, we may have some idea, may find some way of finding her.
I will admit that I do not completely understand what you were speaking of, but I'm sure that there will be clarity sooner rather than later. Please, come in. All of you, please. Is there something that I can help you with, or, as I said, Karast is... I don't know if he hears us or not, truth be told.
Well, I have a feeling that my friend Sabanos is going to want to talk to him, whether or not he can hear it or not. But it's typical for people not to be able to hear what Sabanos is saying, so I think he'll be used to it.
And I believe Sabanos would sort of step up, like as soon as it's sort of dawned on him, because he's just been, but as soon as it dawns on him that this is who he's looking to speak with, he would say, meditation is it's a temporary thing. Can't we just wake him, shake him or something?
We have tried everything we can think of. It has been to no avail. I'm certain that you are welcome to try. He is with Akun. That's where he chose to meditate. I can take you there if you wish.
Certainly. Speaking for himself, not necessarily everyone, but yeah, most definitely that would be yes. And then we probably won't like necessarily role play it, but I think he would then ask as many questions as he could think of. When did the symptoms begin? Why can't you wake him up? How easy is it to normally wake someone up from this? How long is meditation supposed to be? Like looking for every variance, like just trying to go through that process.
Yeah, and Karasan is very forthright. He answers you to the best of his ability, in as much detail as it seems like you might expect. Maybe not want, but at least expect for him to have.
Sure.
Haroon, you noticed something as you stepped into this temple. For one, it's not the first time that you have been in this temple longhouse, and you see an item that was a fixation, at least for a time, a runestone that is against the wall on one side, covered with runic writing and carving all over its face. And you notice that this shrine that's built around this stone, all of these offerings on the ground around it, that behind it, kind of between it and the wall almost, leaning up against the wall, is a very familiar looking blade. It was one that you surrendered long ago in this very room.
I think seeing this blade would bring maybe memories that Haroon had suppressed or tries to forget, and it's only in the quiet moments that they kind of resurface in his mind. Things he's done that he's not proud of, maybe things he's done that he justified as he was in a war and you have to take certain actions, but reflecting back, thinks those actions not maybe were not the best actions to take it, and not wanting to dwell on the past, wants to focus on the future, focus on the task at hand, turns away from this blade.
And it's as you're turning away from this blade, Haroon, that there's perhaps it's a trick of the light, but there's a kind of gleam of light that kind of lights across the surface of this blade, and it turns you back just a half turn, enough to see almost like the sword was pointed towards it. There's a plate that is set with many different kinds of offerings, but what catches your eye are coins. Again, coins are not exceedingly common in Momentum, especially the further away from the edge horizon that you get. But what really catches your attention about these dwarven coins is the fact that you've seen them before, and not all that long ago. You recognize that these are Thricestrike coins, something that Katvarad once told you about in the city of Arenavat. They were mistake. They were there was a hint of an error on them whenever they were minted, not to many non-dwarves, but all the same they were recalled to be resmelted and minted again, yet a large number of these disappeared. When you last encountered these coins, they were in the hands of members of the Throes of Sunset.
Has there been a group of dwarves through these lands recently?
Not that I have seen, no, but there was talk of a group that came through, yes, a rather sizable amount of them. They were guests of Karast's for a while, a few nights before they moved on.
Guest.
Yes. Why?
Did Karast ever mention a group known as the Throes of Sunset?
He did not mention them to me, but I will admit to having come across this name in his journal. I looked through it simply to try and find an answer to this puzzling situation where he has meditated for so long, but I could not find an answer there. But I did come across mention of this Throes of Sunset.
And Sabanos would immediately... What? What do you know of them? What information do you have? Information to me is a weapon. You understand? It's powerful, and I can use it. And we can use it. But I can use it.
Well, I don't know that I'm entirely comfortable with just handing over the High Priest's journal, but what I read in the entry was it was a group of religious dwarves who were seeking greater understanding of the Colossiahs, of Belorion in particular. They stayed with them for a few nights before they moved onward.
Did Karast have reason to think anyone else would ever see this journal?
He kind of looks almost ashamed. I think not, no. His entries beyond that point began to kind of meander.
How long after they left did he enter his meditation?
Several months, 4 or 5.
I think you should sit down. We need to tell you what we know. I think it's the only way you'll be able to truly understand why we need to know everything you know. And Bastrad will just launch into the tale. Like, he's just gonna start, like, and he tries to do it like in kind of the Bonekin tradition of storytelling, where like he's trying to make it like an interesting story, because he was always taught that like no one will listen to whatever you're telling them unless it is like entertaining at the same time, because that's just something that the bone can kind of naturally like do for stories. And so he does this like, it was long ago while it was still while the sun still shined upon us, like, and then he just launches into this whole thing about everything that's happened to them and why they know about Belorion's destruction and the Throes of Sunset and what they've found out about them. And then we arrived here, hungry, tired, haunted, hoping only to find an end to this misery on our way to hell.
he listens with rapt attention to everything that you're saying, and by the end of your story, you can see that he is visibly shaken. His hands, where they kind of rest upon his knees, are trembling ever so slightly in his fingers, and he's almost not looking at you in the eyes. He's more just kind of studying your body language and the presentation of this story. And he thinks for a moment and then says, "And you think that High Priest Karast has something to do with this? With teaching, with committing some kind of atrocity?"
He may not have known what he was doing, but if he told them about any of the Colossiahs, he may have unwittingly contributed to their plan. And he'll look to Sabanos. I heard what the Oathkeeper said to you.
And by that time, Sabanos has put on these ridiculous ornate goggles that have all these strange sort of stuff. So he kind of looks and he goes, "Yes, so did I. And I'm like processing the information. And now, having heard the full tale, having seen the reaction, the response, I think what I would do then is, so Jeremy, what I was going to try to do is see if you would let me, Sabanos he's an inquisitive. His whole thing is investigation, solving mysteries and solving puzzles. And so is there any like narrative or mechanical way that I can figure out what is going on with Karast and why he can't be awake? Even some sort of clue or lead that points us in that direction.
Yes, I believe so. Yes, I think so. There is one piece that I want to put out there before we get to that point.
Okay, absolutely.
So if you will just bear with me here.
Absolutely, yeah, and you can slide that in whenever it makes sense.
Yep.
It would take me time anyway, and I'm like looking with the goggles and like
Absolutely.
examining, weird things. Probably touching stuff I shouldn't be.
When Sabanos just looks over with these giant goggles and then continues to examine, like, yes, I also heard it, and then continues to examine things, Bastard will just say, the Oath Keeper told him to talk to Karast. Just putting it out. Yeah.
He definitely seems to kind of regard Sabanos with a bit of strangeness, but he seems a lot more preoccupied with all of this information that you just gave to him, Bastrad. And he kind of slowly rises and says, that might explain. Hold on. And he disappears for a moment, heading back into the place where the priest would actually house. And he returns with a lockbox that's maybe 1.5 feet, 2 feet or so, and about 6 inches tall. He brings it out and sets it down. Kotvarad, you recognize that this, without a doubt, is a dwarven-made chest. He sets it down on a small table, and you can see that the lock on the outside of this has been broken. He opens this latch and pulls the box open, and it is filled to the brim with Surfric coins. I didn't understand what this meant whenever I first found it, I did force my way into the box, but again, people were desperate. Bastarad, without the
Bastarad.
spiritual leader.
Bastard looks at him and puts a hand on his shoulder and says, "I'm proud of you for taking the initiative and being willing to break rules to protect your people. You have no need to explain what you've done."
But if he kind of gestures to the coin, if this is payment from the dwarves, it's Buster, this is a lot of money.
Yes. Yes, it is. Too much.
What business would High Priest Garast have with this much dwarven coin? You can hear and sense the kind of frustration and anger like starting to well up inside of this bonekin.
Again, Bastard will place a hand on his shoulder and say, "I know. This is infuriating and disappointing. But we don't know for sure yet. Let's see if we can find a way to wake him up."
Pastor, do you understand what this means? If it comes to light that this is all true,
then you will be the best spiritual leader this village has ever had.
I do not want that. Garast is the spiritual leader. He's the one who should be.
Then let's wake him up and find out if he is still worthy to lead.
His jaw clenches on the side. You can see the muscles kind of just beneath his ears kind of balling up, but he simply nods and offers no verbal response.
You said he was with... I forgot the pronunciation of this one.
Akun.
Akun.
Yes, of course. And he kind of turns and starts to head that direction. Sabanos. You have been diligently going over every surface you can find here, leaving no stone unturned, even if it raised an eyebrow.
Yeah.
Let's see. If you would please roll me an investigation.
Absolutely. Oh, that is a natural 20. First roll of the night, baby. So I also have a plus 12 to investigation. So that is maybe the highest I've ever rolled in my life, which is a 32.
Obscene. That's fantastic. Okay.
Oh, yeah, that's great feeling.
So, Sabanos, at some point during the early part of your investigation, you came across the mention of a ritual that is sometimes performed by the Bonekin. It's a blasphemous ritual, according to them. But some of them do it anyways, and it is called Ebisam, where they graft Colossiah bone directly onto living people. And according to everything that the group has divulged to you, it sounds like this Throes of Sunset group has the dwarven members at the very least have signs of having gone through this rite. These Colossiah bone spikes and things coming off of their skulls and their shoulders. And you found a mention of a specific, we'll say it's like a specific powder that's kind of used to help set this this weld, if you will. And you discover the remnants of this kind of a powder on one of the smaller altars, kind of off to the kind of one of the smaller little alcoves of this temple.
That's perfect. And do you you might not have a name for it. Do you have a name for this powder, or like?
I don't. Let me see. Let's call it
Ebasalt.
Ebasalt.
It's got a little girl with an umbrella over her shoulder.
Ebasum salt. No.
It's good for taking a bath.
Taking a bath when you're weary.
Your sore muscles. Let's call it Bossaron.
I love that. God. That's perfect. And so I would start talking to everyone in the room as though they're all listening. And so I'd be sort of pushing things around, like moving erratically. And then I would turn around and I would have this, I imagine maybe it's like a dead bug, something weird and random that I found, that it's pretty gross to be touching. And I hold it up in front of my goggles, and then I turn to Bastarad, and his mentor, and I say, and I'm like looking and I'm spying, different, like you say, there's different pieces, there's things about a ritual and all this thing, and I go, what is Ebasum?
Kassan turns at this almost as if he's going to chide you, Sabanos, for like even mentioning this word. Almost like you might have like been scraping on his nerves a little, like poking around, touching things that you're not supposed to, but this is definitely like the time when the kids knocked something off the table and he's now turned around and said, hey, look, enough of your ish. He kind of turns around and says, why would you even... And he realizes what it is that you're holding. What is that? Where did you learn that word?
I learned that word from the scores of evidence laying all around us. It is coming together. I see it. I see it. And I would sort of like go over to the altar and start crushing the bug. I'm just doing some weird thing that I think is the right thing to do. And I go, and then I heard you talking about the journal. You were talking this, that, and...
What is he doing? Bastarad. It's like, he's performing some kind of weird, like, dissection of this worm on an altar.
And
so, this guy's, like, losing it.
Bastarad just, like, he looks at Kazaran with this kind of, like, slightly, like, intrigued but almost frantic, like, hold on a minute, like give him a minute, let's see where he's going with this.
He can't. Like, and he's like protesting,
and just under, like, very quietly to Kazaran, Bastarad will say, like, no, he's right, we've seen many dwarves who have undergone Ebasum. Just, I need to know what he's going to say.
He's performing the Ebasum here, and he's like starting to like raise his voice in anger now and yell.
And you could see that Sabanos is like staying like totally calm, like, just a minute, one moment. Here we go. And then I squish this worm, and this sort of, the Icarus insides of this worm sort of drip onto the altar. And what it does is it actually like changes the color of what doesn't look like anything being there to the residue of Bassaron powder. It almost like reveals this powder. And then I wipe 2 of my fingers in it, and I hold it up to them, and I go, Bassaron powder. Now, if what you're saying is correct, this is what you need for Ebasam. Here is what is happening. And then he would sniff the Bassaron powder a little bit, and maybe go to put his tongue, and then like think twice about it, and then wipe it on his shirt.
What you're saying is no. Look, being in league with some kind of strange, nefarious cult is one thing, but you're standing here in the temple dedicated to Akun, and you are accusing its high priest of betraying. I can't even say the words.
Hazaran, look at everything that is happening. Look, Tarlok is no more. That was the first thing you told me when I got here. Our village is gone. Is it beyond belief that something horrible is happening among the Bonekin? It's happening everywhere. It's been, how long has the long night persisted? This was supposed to be over by now. But it drifts on and on with no end in sight. And beyond that, so far, Karast has not been accused of anything. He's saying it happened here, not that Karast did it. We can find out, but we have to go to him, and we have to wake him up.
Then Sabanos would sort of chime in, not even waiting, and he'd say, no, yes, don't be preposterous. I'm not accusing Karast of this. It could have just as likely been you, and maybe you put him in a coma. I haven't figured all that out yet.
He takes 2 steps towards Sabanos at this point. Like, definitely pushed past his limit now. What did you say?
Well, I haven't worked it all out yet. See, I'm not blaming anyone. It could have been anyone.
Sabanos, this would be a good time to stop talking.
Yeah,
Kazaran, I apologize for my friend. He meant no disrespect in your home. He simply has a tongue that moves faster than his mind. We thank you for your hospitality and ask you to show us to Karast so we may attempt to wake him. And he'll just shoot a look at Sabanos like, don't.
right. And Sabanos mutters,
I know you're about to.
Yeah. And he just, and he doesn't. He doesn't get it out because you interrupt him like 2 or 3 times.
That's perfect. So, without another word, Karasan turns and kind of storms out of the Longhouse Temple. Seemingly just with the understanding that you're going to follow him. And he leads you out of town, where there is a considerable crowd that has kind of started to gather. Not quite close enough necessarily to be eavesdropping, maybe a few, but definitely enough to be nearby in case and when something happens. so that it doesn't go unnoticed. He doesn't seem to pay any mind, Karasan, and presses past them.
I'm gonna just scan the crowd for any familiar faces, people that I may have known, especially like any of Dathkari's friends or family that I may have known at the time in Tarlock that I don't, that kind of left me once she died or left.
Yeah, I would say that you probably see one or two of them. As a matter of fact, a younger bonekin approaches. One that you may not be as familiar with, but his name is Tarkadon. He is an acolyte that works here at this temple, typically beneath Karast, but he must be serving under Karastan at the moment. He comes forward and he says, Bastarad, you traveled, you left with Ingvarad, but I don't see her amongst your number. Where is she?
Oh, calm yourself. Is it Tarkaran? Was it?
Tarkadon, yes.
Tarkadon, I apologize. It's a long story. I'm going to speak to her family now to talk to them about it, but perhaps I'll explain to you afterwards.
You're speaking to her family. Is everything okay? Is she all right?
It's a long story, but I have no reason to believe that she is not.
Okay.
I cannot deceive you, yet I cannot speak further on the matter. You must understand.
I understand, of course. Yes.
And Bastarad has always kind of been about honesty, even when it's uncomfortable. But this is one of those moments where he's going to be honest as he can without saying anything. And it's especially within Bonekin lands, speaking truthfully is a particularly sacred thing. It's special. It's important.
And Haroon, you recognize this young Bonekin, Tarkadon. He was here whenever you spent time recovering at this temple. As a matter of fact, you discovered a connection between Tarkaron and Ingvarad, although that is not known to him. I believe they were a series of letters that you found.
I think upon seeing him and hearing what Basher had told him, I think Haroon would lean towards Basharad and maybe say something not necessarily quiet to where only Basharad could hear, but he wouldn't say it out loud, but he would say he deserves to know.
And Bastarad will kind of look at Haroon inquisitively, what are you saying? And not quite put it together. He would require a little more of a push to understand.
Ingvarad cared deeply for him.
And he'll kind of settle back with this. He'll turn to the young Bonekin and then very quietly, just trying to make it so just he can hear it. She was taken from us, but we intend to get her back. We don't know exactly where we can find her or who has her, but we have many leads, and we're headed in the right direction.
I understand, I think. Please, when you can, let me know anything that you find out.
He'll nod. I'll keep you in mind.
Thank you. And you can tell that he's not at peace with this information, but that he's going to let it rest for now, and he leaves you to your task. You follow Karasan out of the edge of town, and you eventually arrive at the remains of Akun, the goddess of the forge, of crafting, and of mortal life. This rib cage kind of forms this almost a hedge, if you will, that borders the walking path of the spine that was left behind of this Colossiah. And the gaping jaw sitting on the ground ahead of you almost forms almost a step kind of leading up into the hollow of this skull, where there is a blade driven almost to the crossguard through the left eye socket of this skull and into the ground beyond. A violent end for sure, as an alarming number of the Colossiah seem to have suffered.
Karazhan, I wanted to share this with you as soon as I heard it. I thought you might find it amusing, although I know this isn't really a time for amusement. But in one of the dwarven taverns I visited when I went to one of their cities, I heard a tale that Akun was the catalyst for the peace at Thricestrike. That now I know that Akun died millennia later than the peace at Thricestrike, but I just thought you might find it amusing that some dwarves believe that it was actually the death of Akun that brought Tarlok to make peace with Irashara and the other one that I said it was Arinavat.
That's foolish. The dwarves have never shown a strong understanding for the Colossiah. Well, he kind of walks up to the lower jaw and kind of motions towards the skull. Karast is inside. We did not want to remove him from this sacred place as he meditated, but he's better safe, I think, inside the skull, and so we moved him thusly.
So just out of character, anybody have any idea like what we like how to wake a meditating priest? Because if they've already tried like slapping him, that's pretty much my whole game plan.
That's the extent of Bassarat's tool set.
That's most of what I got.
Seriously. Well, I was gonna see if there was any evidence of that particular, like how far he got, or was it him? Like, we really don't know if it was Kurast who was partaking in the Ebasam. So what I was going to suggest is there evidence of the Ebasam, and if possible, either is there an antidote to reverse the effects of Bossarin powder and Ebasam, or can we, if we find evidence of Ebasam, remove it? Is kind of what I was thinking. So unless anybody stopped me, maybe we would, I don't know, however you guys want to handle it, but that was my thought.
Astrod is pretty content to like to let Sabanos take the lead because, like I said, like I have no spells other than my magic hands, and I can slap somebody with them, but that's literally it. And it sounds like they've already tried that.
Go ahead.
I could maybe try to slap his brain.
Oh,
so to speak.
Yeah, I'm
interesting.
Intriguing. I don't know. I don't know if I can control how hard it would work. It could maybe kill him for a moment.
For a moment.
But I mean, if that happens, I think I can. Yeah, I can fix that.
I think I can help fix it. I can probably keep him from passing if that does occur.
I know I can hit him in his mind. It's going to be a very strong hit.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I can try and use some magic to restore if he's under an effect of some sort of poison or paralytic. I can try to remove that.
So I think we let Sabanos try his investigative, totally non-magical, totally mundane corporeal route of like, is there something we can scrape off this guy that'll make him okay again? And then go from there to the restorative magic and then the brain slap.
I agree that our potentially murderous solution should probably be the last resort.
That's really what I was
rather
trying
than
to.
plan A.
We're just gonna see Kevrat come in and be like, "Clear, everybody, clear!" Drastic measures.
That's fair. That makes sense.
Oh my goodness.
That's fair.
I'm seeing Sabanos. Sabanos is all like, okay, let's examine this. And Haru's all like, let me just pump this like adrenaline shot into his body, see if that wakes him.
I love that.
Kavarat's like, no, let's just go straight to just like restarting his shocking his nervous system.
Just to kind of.
Have we tried turning him off and back on again?
I was just gonna say, can you
have you hold down the power button for 3 seconds and
just force reboot his brain?
The spell that I would use is literally called synaptic static. So
that's awesome.
I love that our options have come down to careful examination or brain electricity.
Yeah. But to be fair, if he does die, I have a way to bring him back. So
I understand those diamonds.
Yeah,
I'm down, man. This is
as long as he doesn't die. I mean, I can bring him back from the brain.
As long as he doesn't die.
Kevin's all that. I can bring him. I mean, he's like, I can bring him back. I mean, what comes back might not be all of him, but
oh, got him.
It's definitely one of those like, yeah, if he does die, I can probably, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I can bring him back.
Well, and kind of thinking of it in game, can you imagine like they were upset when I was just saying bad stuff. They were ready to fight me. So can you imagine what Kassan would do if we killed Karast, even for a minute? Like, I don't know how easy it would be to be like, no, wait. I'm going to clean it up.
We'll just grab him and put him on our shoulders. We'll we'll have a weekend at Bernie's situation.
I promise we'll fix this, guy. Just
It's a whole new campaign.
Sabanos just gonna come out and be like, just explaining away, like, yep, he was in league with evil. That's the conclusion we came up with.
Yep.
So we read his brain before we fried it, and he was definitely evil.
Promise. We have
So
no
just,
proof.
Just to be clear, you want to do other stuff before I try to slap his brain.
Yes, Sabanos, go examine him. See if you find any signs of Ebasam on him or performing the ritual. If he has the Bazaran powder on his hands or his clothing or something, I don't know. You're the one with the mind.
And so, Jeremy, would Kassan allow this? Or did he leave? Maybe I'm mistaken.
No, he's still there. He basically
Okay.
He's stopped kind of at the lower jaw and is just kind of letting you guys pretty much go and do your thing.
So he's been there for this whole conversation.
Yeah, I would imagine. And he's probably fuming, kind of quietly, kind of staring at Bostrod with like a sideways glance like, what have you done? Like,
I like to imagine if he was there the whole time, that we're doing that thing where we're like, no, you do this. You go first. You do this. Looking over our shoulder, just like.
And someone would raise their voice.
I just grin at him like.
And you know when someone says something shocking and another person raises their voice too loudly, you go, "What do you mean, brain electricity?" Shh. And so yeah, Jeremy, I would. What I'm looking for specifically is evidence that he has been trying any of this, the Basaran powder, any sorts of signs of Ebasam, and I'll say this politely. I will leave no organ unturned. I'm going to be checking places that most people wouldn't be dreaming of touching because I just don't care. That kind of stuff is like, Sabanos wouldn't even be thinking that. It's very clinical. But there would be no spot on his body I didn't check.
As soon as Bastrad sees this start to happen, he's going to and not even under a pretense of trying to make conversation. It's more of a you probably shouldn't watch what he's doing. You're not going to like it. But he'll just kind of turn to go on the other side of Karazhan to start just talking to him. We should probably just keep talking while this happens, because again, I don't think you're going to be very pleased with it, but I promise this is an effective crew that gets results.
He does not seem pleased in the least, and is definitely does not have his full attention on you. He's definitely kind of turning and kind of trying to peek in through the other eye socket and things occasionally, but he's trying his best.
And I'm trying to think of the most salacious things that we've done that I didn't mention, or the most the things that might draw his attention, talking about so then we entered this motor carriage race with ether carriages, and there were these Ebasam dwarves that were all had spikes in their head of Colossiah bone, just trying to tell him the most exciting stories I can, just to try to keep his mind off what's happening to his priest.
That's amazing.
And you managed to at least keep him distracted long enough that Sabanos, you get in there, no pun intended.
I was going to say, okay, side.
Phrasing. Snapping on these gloves.
Just to be clear, it's just those yellow dish gloves because that's all that's available.
That's all that's
He took Mage Hand for a reason.
There you go. Yeah.
Oh boy.
All right. So you start kind of examining Karast, and you don't find any signs of Ebasam that have been done on Karast himself, but you do find traces of the Basaran powder on his person, and maybe even in some of the creases of his hands and things of that nature. And more importantly, what you discover is in difficult to see places here inside the skull. You notice small pieces of the Colossiahs' bone have been removed. It looks like kind of through the kind of careful instrumentation that the Bonekins only really hold the secrets of reclaiming.
Okay. I would probably share this information quietly, purposefully keeping it from Kassan, because now he really is a suspect to me. Like before, I was just using law of odds. Just, yeah, hey, man, everybody's a suspect until they're not. And now I'm actually suspecting that he did it. Or that whoever Kurast helped apply this Ebasam to did this to him so that they couldn't be caught. And so is Ebasam powder, would I know or could I find out if Ebasam powder by itself, this weld, is it toxic? Is it poisonous? Is it something that could be used or, that could have poisoned him?
Nothing about it that you know of is toxic in any way. It doesn't seem to be any kind of poison or used in any alchemy in that way. It seems to be basically only used in Ebasam.
Okay. What I'd love to do, if you'd let me, is can I casually... What I'm going to do is share some information. But what I'm actually doing is I am now looking for traces and signs on Kassan of anything out of the ordinary, perhaps Ebasam or some of the Bassarin powder or any of those things. So I'm giving frivolous details and making them sound like they're important and talking, and maybe I'll even continue to pretend to search the body and sort of, and as as Bastarad and Kassan are talking and Bastarad's weaving this fabulous yarn of the motor carriages and all that, now I'm glancing over, making it look like I'm just like, almost done. But that's what I'm looking for. Is there anything I can see? Any evidence?
Okay, so let's do this. Let's do an investigation roll at disadvantage.
Okay. I hope the next one's high. That was an 18 before mods. Okay. Second roll was a 3. I have a 12, so that still gets me a 15.
Okay, that's still fantastic. So you're examining him from afar and kind of replaying what you have already witnessed and seen of him through your interaction, and you don't recall any signs of Ebasam or of Bassaran powder. He seems genuinely taken back by all of this. This seems like very fresh news to him, and even judging by the reaction of the mention of Ebasam and the fact that this has been going on, shows that it's not something that he is comfortable with at all. And it's pretty obvious in his body language.
So then I think I would turn around and sort of, do the classic glove snap, like, well, there's good news and then there is bad news. The good news is I'm quite certain you didn't do it. And he basically, says, no, in fact, he doesn't say I'm quite certain. He says, the good news is, Kassan, you didn't do this.
I could have told you that.
Well, but that's what everyone who's guilty tells me. So the bad news is that there's no sign of what caused this. And then I would reveal the missing pieces of bone and what I did find, the powder on his hands, and kind of point out the Ebison powder, or sorry, the Bassaron powder, but also explain that there were 0 traces of any Ebison, and then posit that this looks like he did this for someone. So someone in the village is very likely containing Ebison, if they're still here.
Whenever you mention that there are pieces of Akun that have been removed, he demands that you show him what you're talking about. And when you show that to him, he turns and his gaze falls on Karast, and he kind of stands up to his full height and begins charging.
Yeah,
towards the meditating priest.
I was gonna say, as soon as he stands up, Bastarad's going to try to interject himself. And
Move, Bastarad!
Stop. We have to wake him up. He must answer for what he's done, and he must be conscious for that to happen. If you kill him now, he suffers not at all for what he's done to our people, for what he's done to this Colossiah.
Bastarad, this is beyond heinous.
You'll get no disagreement from me, but don't let him off so easily.
You're right, Bastarad.
Bastarad will look to Catharad, and he'll just with a pretty intense look, just lock eyes and just nod.
We need to move if I'm going to do this.
Wait.
Like outside.
Everyone back, everyone out.
Like
Kazaran, let her do her work. She's young, but she knows what she's doing.
He kind of resigns himself and moves. Yeah, go ahead, Alan.
Before
the brain slap.
Yeah. Haroon would. So is he in a meditative position? Like, is he in
kind of lotus position? His,
perfect.
legs
Yeah.
crossed.
So Haroon would kind of come up behind Karast and place a hand on his back, and closes his eyes. And as he does so, like an ether-like steam, if you will, kind of starts flowing off of his body. This first is kind of like whitish, and then as he opens his eyes, it glows that kind of bluish glow, and he begins to channel his essence into Karas, trying to remove any sort of disease or condition that maybe have put him in this state. So I'm going to cast Lesser Restoration, which I can touch the creature and I can end either one disease or condition affecting it. The condition can be blinded, deafened, paralyzed, or poisoned. So is he being affected by any of those?
Unfortunately, no. It does not seem to be an affliction that is from any kind of exterior source. This seems like, to you, in your, I guess you would call it professional assessment, aided by your magic, and probably actually more aided by the fact that you have had a similar crisis, that this seems like an internal conflict of some kind, that he has volunteered or chosen this
All right. Yeah. So after getting that sense that it's more of his consciousness versus his body, I would say his body is not. It is not his body. Through his meditative state, he is isolated his consciousness. I'm not sure if Katvarod's ability would necessarily break him out of that consciousness. I think we've seen something very similar before. Would this have been something similar to, I can't recall the name. I want to say the Oracle, but I'm not sure if that was the bonekin that was in the vines of the tree and everything.
Yes. This trance is very reminiscent of that. Absolutely.
Knowing of that trance or recalling that, what I think in repeating the same ritual, so to speak, the trance ritual, would an individual or us as a team be able to interact with his consciousness at that level?
If you could achieve that, you think that it's possible. You know that there are different planes of existence, that there are different
Yeah, I would imagine
that
the elves with their ascension would definitely believe that. Yeah,
absolutely. So it's definitely something that you think is possible.
Okay. So I would of course relay this information, saying that there may be a way for us to reach him. Now, in that time, if Katvarod wants to do her thing while nobody's paying attention, I guess, or
how big is this space that we're in, the inside of the skull?
It's probably. Let me bring the picture back up. I would have to say it's. On the interior, probably 20 feet, give or take.
20 feet total. Yeah. If I'm going to do this, I need everybody outside of the skull. I think, at least. I mean,
yeah.
it's just a thing to try. And like you said, we can definitely maybe help him if this doesn't work.
Whenever you start talking about everybody basically needing to clear out, back up, exit the skull, Kara-san is going to say, "You will not damage Akun." Is that correct?
It is. It will. This is very specifically targeted to the mind.
Okay.
I am almost certain. I'm very, very certain it's not going to hurt the bones.
Are you serious? You can't be certain of your own abilities?
No. I know this. I know that it won't. It's a lot of power, which is why I want you to not be there. I mean, take it from them. You don't want to be too close when a thing happens, and if he's allowing it, I'm kind of trying to like urge him along as I'm talking to him outside and trying to get everybody at least 10 feet away from the skull.
Again, he seems very reticent to basically turn over the remains of his god or a god to your care, but he seems to lend Bastarad, and then by proxy you, a lot of faith, and so he will.
So if him and everybody else then move along outside? Okay. And I'm going to take just a step forward from everybody else.
I just want to ask one more time. Do we think there's another way, or is this is the best shot we have? Arun, you said there might be something. I just wanted to make sure. I don't know how we get into a trance with Akun. There's okay, go for it.
And at first it doesn't seem like anything happens. And then so this is entirely up to you, Jeremy. He would need to make a saving throw. If he's in a state where he's going to automatically fail that. Oh, that's low. 1, 2, 2, 4, 6, 11, 14, 20. So from inside the skull, there's this sort of kind of a sound, and I would imagine all around us, everybody's hair on their arms, the back of their neck, you get that you can smell and feel the ozone in the air of the electricity, and there's this sort of and I kind of stutter back a step as I stepped maybe just on the edge of where because this is a 20-foot radius, that there's a psychic burst of synaptic static. And since he failed, he takes 8d6 psychic damage. I rolled 21 on the damage. And as soon as I sort of regain my composure, I kind of look around at everybody like, okay, and make sure the skull stayed intact, which it would. It doesn't do any physical damage. And then I immediately run in to see if there's been any change in his status.
That's right. We'll run after her.
At the ready to help in any way. Just in case, if it did work, he will have muddled thoughts for 1 full minute. Because it's a complete brain scramble for let's just say I'm not using this spell in the way it's intended. So yeah, I'm going to run in there and see what his state is. Sort of scrabbling over the jaw and skittering it.
Katharad is kind of the first kind of up and over into the skull. Once again, Bastrad not far behind her at all. And I imagine Karasan is also close at hand. And Katharad, the first thing that you see as you crest over the kind of the eye socket, the orb, into the skull proper, is that Karast is moving. He's gone from kind of in this relaxed lotus position. He's on his knees, kind of bent forward, kind of holding his head just below where his horns come off of his skull. And he is weeping.
Seeing him moving, I would immediately rush to his side, and I would put a hand on his shoulder, and there would be, if Bastarad came in behind me, you would see this light energy passing, this sort of liquid light and shadow passing from my hand into him, healing 8 points of the damage that I did to him, using my healing light ability.
And though he seems to relax a little, his body is less tense, he's almost rocking back and forth, mumbling to himself in Bonekin, so I don't know that you would understand any of it. The moment that Bosterod and Karasan come into proximity, into the closeness of him, he turns, looks at the two of you with a horrid expression on his face. I have done terrible things. And that is where we're going to end tonight's session.
I can't believe a brain slap worked.
Holy shnikes, that worked. What?
That's amazing, man. Good thinking.
Yeah,
Jake.
yeah, amazing.
Like
That was,
seriously good thinking.
That was one of those situations where I prepped a problem, not a solution. And I left it up to to all of you to come up with something, and that sounded like a great idea, very intriguing and interesting to see how that plays out. So that was fun.
That's awesome.
Cool.
I
Excellent.
was all
awesome.
set for Cutverad to get yelled at again. At least she had the foresight to get everybody else out of the way, because otherwise anybody within the radius takes that 86 damage.
I want to point out that she knows what she's doing was really more for Kotvarad's sake than like actually trying to convince Karazhan. It was like a, hey, I trust you. You got this, right?
Right?
If you watch the playback,
You say-
you say that, there's a moment where I just kind of go,
Imagine one of those situations where like we're all like behind him as like you're talking to him, and just he's all like, "Oh yeah, she knows what she's doing," and just all our eyes behind him are just like.
That was awesome.
Yeah, I just said Johnny Friendly Fire is the best one to watch your back.
Johnny Friendly Fire.
That was a good session.
yeah,
That was a lot of
really,
fun.
really good.
there's some awesome lore in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
really
awesome.
Excited to get to some of this stuff. Some of it's been a long time coming. So yeah, I'm gonna pass it over to my players so that they can do outros, add anything that they would like before we call it an evening. So we'll go in reverse order and start with Jeff this time.
I'm Jeff. If you want to find my stuff, you can check it out on Tabletop Terrors, which I do alongside with Tim as well here. A super fun session as always. We got some deep lore drops in this one, which is always fun, especially for a group of characters as connected as this one. Be able to finally hash out some of those details that have been hiding for over a year, like however long it's been now.
Almost 2. Yeah.
2
think,
years,
I think October
Wow.
is our 2-year anniversary, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
When
'cause
I had to
was
look up my
episode
question-
18, right?
What's that?
This was episode 18.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
When I had to look at my questionnaire, it was from November of 2018. So
yeah.
So yeah.
So it's super cool to see threads from so far back finally worming their way into the game,
Awesome.
still being relevant and interesting and dramatic after all that time. This game was always a blast, and this session was no exception.
I appreciate that, Jeff. Thank you. All right. Next up is Alan.
Hi, yes, my name's Alan. You can find me pretty much anywhere under CFT RPG, and you'll find me over on Jake's channel on Friday running Curse of Strahd. So come hang out, join the Fang Club as we call it. As always, very awesome session, and it's just so. It was nice to have the reprieve at the end. With the joking, just because it's so heavy. These sessions have so much the dramatic piece of role playing, which is awesome. I love it. But it's nice to have the laughter too. So ultimately, great session, everybody, and really enjoyed it and enjoy being a part of these games. So.
I'm happy to have you here. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, like I said, these games always are massive payoffs in dividends. Everybody understands their characters so very well and is able to bring these threads from, necrosis back from the dead, from so long ago, and weave them into the story, and like Jeff said, in a very, very meaningful way. It's just a really fantastic feeling. And then to have a group of players that can bounce back and forth from, like you said, the very serious, somber notes that need to be hit, to the lighthearted relief from those moments that help to kind of alleviate the tension. Okay, next up we have Tim.
I am Tim of Absolute Tabletop, and also, as Jeff said, Tabletop Terrors. And really, the cool thing for me is that I've watched some of the earlier sessions. I wasn't fully caught up when I started playing, but I have watched some of the earlier sessions. So it's like catching a TV show that you maybe missed a season of or two. So you have just enough information so that it has a little weight for me. I'm like, oh, wait, I kind of remember them talking about that. And then it's the perfect balance, too, of like not knowing, because Sabanos wouldn't know a lot of this stuff. And so asking genuine questions like, whoa, hold on, who did this, or what? So that has created for some really cool, not only recaps to kind of, revivify some of those plot threads, but also character moments and trust building and stuff. So it's just been really neat. And love this group. I think we strike a really cool balance of everyone having this very specific vibe. And I love it. I just really love this game. So thank you very much.
I appreciate that, man. Thank you very much for coming in midstream, as it were, and picking it up and running with it. Just hitting the ball back and forth easily. It's been great to have a character worked into the story this late, and for it not to immediately devolve into the everybody's drawing guns at each other, and well, who are you and what are you doing here and why aren't you being able to kind of have that trust established quickly, and move past the awkward introduction phase that sometimes happens. So I appreciate that. Okay, next up is Austin.
Speaking of weird, so a couple things. First of all, I'm Austin, the channelist. I don't YouTube. If you find me on Twitter, that's really weird. I'm on there, but I mostly just retweet comedians. But so what I want to say is this session was a total blast. It was so much fun to finally get to like dig up the stuff that I've been sitting on forever. And it's always fun and a little scary when your DM messages you before the game to say, hey, maybe brush up on your backstory because it might come in handy tonight. Because you're like, oh shit, all right, well, gotta be on my A game. Also, super fun to finally get to tell Haroon why I was so salty towards him at the beginning when I saw him flirting with Ingvarad, because like I was almost like, I wonder if Alan thinks I don't like him, because like I don't want to give that impression, but I also really want Bastarad to kind of hate Haroon. And also like love Sabanos as a character. Tim, you've worked so great into our game so quickly, and I like also love the getting to do those like, hey wait, like here's some info that might be appropriate for you to know. I'm so glad we finally got to like actually have our characters talk about like sharing intelligence. And like this is the first game that I've really played that has had character changes, like player changes over time, more than character changes. And it's worked out so well that it's gone so smoothly, been so integrated into the plot, so interesting to play out, and with such great players that I had a blast, and I just wanted to thank everybody for all the parts that you played in it. And I think that's all the backslappery I have. Yeah. Okay.
Ingvarad would be proud. Lloyd, however, No. No. Man,
Oh yeah, one last thing. I love that that Ingvarad is gone by the time that actually comes out.
Right.
The time that information drops is when she's been gone for like 4 sessions.
Aw.
That's amazing because she never gets to find out.
I'm sure somehow Lloyd will find out, even if Ingvarad herself doesn't know. Yeah, that was, like I said, I've been waiting for that bomb to drop for a long, long time. Whenever you gave me that at character creation, I was like, oh, this is going to be so fantastic. When it finally does air out with the dirty laundry, I cannot wait. And it was a beautiful moment. So
It colored every interaction I had with Ingvarad. Like,
Yeah.
that was always in the forefront of my mind with every moment with her.
But those are the best kinds of reveals. When you go back and look at everything, and now there's a different light. There's a different way to read all of the other stuff that has come previously. It's like watching The Sixth Sense again. You're like, oh, okay, now I understand better. So yeah, it's awesome, and I'm very happy that's come out, and that we've managed to brush up on a lot of the stuff that Bastrad has been dealing with this whole time. It was cool. All right, last but certainly not least, Jacob.
Yeah, I like that Sabanos finally learned what we're doing. I think somebody said it somewhere in the chat. All along, it's been kind of like, shut up and get in our boat. We're going to hell. And now you're like, oh, there's actually a reason we're doing this. Yeah, this was just another awesome session. This is one of those games that I have no problem if I sit here for 3 hours and don't say a word, because you get to watch these other people are in the spotlight, the story that's unfolding that involves them. It's so easy to just become that character that's just quietly observing, and the player that becomes almost like audience member at that point, just observing everything, because it's I've said it before, this is like a master class at times, of role playing and role play interaction between characters, but also the way we as players interact with one another, to play our characters in the way that we do, despite the emotion and the conflict and those moments of levity and stuff. I look forward to this game every month. So that is awesome. I, by the way, am Jake from Mini Terrain Domain. You can find me at all places Mini Terrain Domain. In particular, I want to draw your attention to twitch.tv/Mini Terrain Domain. Thursday nights at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. Every Thursday night is our Dawnbringers campaign. We are in our season 4, Heart of Nightfang Spire. Tomorrow's episode, or that whenever you're watching this, the episode that we're about to play is session 13. The only thing that would make it better is if it were actually on a Friday the 13th, but things have gotten pretty harrowing for these 10th level, or I think 11th level characters, and it's really exciting. Excuse me. So yeah, that you can we do a lot of D&D stuff and miniature painting and things on the channel. So if you like that kind of stuff, check out Mini Terrain Domain.
I agree, definitely. Go check out the stuff that Jake does over on Mini Terrain Domain, and especially tomorrow night, because who knows what the hell's going to happen. Although I'm fairly certain that my character is going to find a trap.
2 party members down.
Yeah.
Starting the session with 2 unconscious party members.
Yeah.
Dang.
We had to GTFO hardcore last session, but we're going back in. At least my character is. So I'm sure nothing bad will happen from here on out. So yeah, this game is a really, really amazing thing to watch unfold every month. This world is in a large part very untouched, very undiscovered in a lot of ways. This is the first campaign I've ever run in this setting, and I love finding all of these new places to take the story with you guys, and the fact that, like you said, Jake, that all of you are so adept at moving in and out of the spotlight and it not being an issue. That's a rare thing to find in a single player, much less an entire group of players. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons that this campaign has done as well as it has, is because you guys float very, very easily and share that spotlight. And I appreciate it immensely, because it's made this campaign phenomenal. So, from the bottom of my heart, I thank all of you players. You're all wonderful people, wonderful friends of mine, as well as wonderful players. And for anybody who is tuning in this evening, again, I deeply appreciate you stopping by the channel. If you like what you saw, hit the like button, subscribe if you'd like. There's a lot more content on the channel, and hopefully there is a lot more to come. And until then, may your dice roll high and your snacks always be within reach.